Hello, my name is Kevin Price. I'd like to talk to you today about engine failures in IMC or night. Probably one of the most serious emergencies you could ever have. And so when that happens, now what? So I'll give you some thoughts, and hopefully this will be of value and benefit to you as you continue your flying aspirations. I'm a CFWI. I am also a retired Air Force pilot, flew F-16s in the Air Force, so had to give a lot of thought about engine out operations in that aircraft, and really reliable, but at the same time, engine failures have happened, and the airplane was made to be landed with the engine out. So for a very long time, I've been giving a lot of thought to engine failures under the best conditions as well as the worst. This particular presentation I have given at EAA Air Adventure for the last 2 years. This is a somewhat modified version from what I previously gave. Hopefully it's improved for those of you that attended it previously at EAA. When I'm finished with this, well, obviously I'll be finished at the end of this presentation. If you'd like a copy of it, happy to send it to you. A PDF version of it, so you can email me as you see there with my email address in the lower left of this first slide here. Just to be clear here, the purpose of this presentation, I'll just read it, is to prompt and facilitate thought, planning, preparation, and discussion that can make us all safer pilots. I'm not telling you to do anything. You as the PIC are the ultimate authority for your own aircraft and the single person responsible for the decisions that are made, courses of action taken, and ultimately the end results. Don't sue me or try. Here's a scenario. Imagine you're flying at night, 8,000 feet IMC, and the weather is low, 800-foot ceiling, well below you there, 3 miles visibility. 3, 2, 1, engine fails. You have the aircraft. What are you going to do? A few things come to mind here. Some of them you definitely want to do, some of them not such a priority. The key point, though, that I want to underscore with this is that the time to figure out what to do is not when that happens. It's to give a lot of thought ahead of time how to handle the best you can a situation that truly would be one of the most challenging you would ever encounter as a pilot. So my point is, with the overall discussion for tonight, is that you need to have a plan and execute it. This is an excellent video that was on, well, you can get it on, well, you've got the link there. It's excellent. It shows an instructor that clearly had a plan before he encountered a real-world problem. So I'd like for you to listen to this, ponder it, and clearly this came out well because he's making the video. So listen and consider what he has to say here.
I was in the right seat of an A36 Bonanza providing flight instructions. We were in actual conditions and we were at about 4,000 feet being vectored for an approach at the end of a training session, when suddenly there was a significant reduction in power. I could feel myself being put into my shoulder harness a little bit. I'm holding just a little back pressure to hold altitude and the airplane slowing to best glide speed. I keyed the microphone, told Wichita Approach that I had a partial power loss, declaring an emergency. The controller did what controllers are supposed to do. Said, turn left heading 240 to intercept the final approach course. And I told the controller, negative, I'm going to maintain a heading directly to the airport. Given that they're trying to make this as easy as possible for you, was the controller said, descend and maintain 2,500 feet. I said, negative, I'm going to maintain 4,000 feet until you tell me I'm 2 miles from the airport.
So again, I think this is an outstanding example of having a plan, taking control of the situation. And as he said, you know, the controller's initial reaction is just going to be to, like, okay, get you on an instrument approach and, you know, into the field. But that, in all probability, would not work out well if certainly with full power loss. Partial power loss, maybe. but that opens up a whole can of worms in and of itself. So anyhow, I just think this is an outstanding example of how this situation situations such as this can be handled. The theme throughout this discussion will be to have a plan, and not just have a plan, but practice it. You can go out in day VFR conditions with a safety pilot and practice this, what you would do, ad nauseum and safely, so it'll become natural if you ever do encounter it. It all kind of starts out, with a mindset of how you're going to react to any emergency, and this one in particular, again, is a pretty dire one. It goes back to what we were taught in the Air Force, and I think it's propagated throughout even general aviation. It's essentially, aviate, navigate, and communicate in that order. Fly the airplane first. Don't get spatial disorientation while you're fighting with avionics or trying to figure out how to start an engine and everything else. So aviate, then get pointed towards the field and then start talking. You'll help yourself out if throughout the flight, if you'll keep up with the nearest airfields and as well as the weather along your route of flight. Ultimately, if the dreaded emergency occurs and your engine does fail, then of course, as I alluded to earlier, maintain aircraft control, turn to the nearest airfield, fly best glide airspeed, take appropriate actions, and declare an emergency with ATC. So as far as flying, the thing to consider here is that you need to have your initial steps just pretty much wired. So as I alluded to in the previous slide, maintain aircraft control, get pointed to the nearest airfield. Now this is the one time you might want to talk sooner rather than later, as long as your aircraft control is assured, so that you can get pointed in the right direction. If you're above best glide airspeed, maintain level flight while you're slowing to your best glide airspeed. Once all that's taken care of, conditions permitting, troubleshoot, address the engine failure. It might be something really simple, switching the fuel tanks, applying carb heat, getting the emergency fuel switch on in case there was an engine-driven fuel pump has failed. So there could be a simple solution. But if it's something like, oil temperature, oil pressure indications, you're not going to fix it. So at that point, you need to get all focused on maintaining aircraft control and getting pointed to an airfield where you can have hope for a favorable outcome. So how far can you glide? You can get into the charts in your pilot's information handbook. It'll tell you how far you can glide, and always that's based on no wind. But for reasons I'll explain throughout the remainder of this discussion tonight, is that pretty much everything will glide at least 1 mile per 1,000 feet. Even the space shuttle, almost, not quite, but it was near a 1 mile per 1,000 feet. And of course, that's based on no wind. So what you want to do is, to help yourself out even more, fly your best glide airspeed until your landing is assured. Now, of course, as I said there in the first sentence, it's all based on no wind, your max range, your best glide speed. So what if winds are a factor? I won't go into it tonight, but once upon a time ago, I was in a glider and I encountered an unexpected headwind, and I was like, uh-oh. So then I had to revert back to what I was taught when I learned to fly gliders, which is basically after I had already retired from the Air Force. I kind of did it a little backwards there. And but the rule of thumb is, with the headwind, increase your best glide speed by 1/2 the headwind component. In that case, for me, it made the difference for getting that glider home that day. Another thing to consider is that if you have a headwind and it will keep you from making a field, well, turn that headwind into a crosswind, or better yet, a tailwind, to reach an alternative airfield, which may not be the closest. You might have a field that's 5 miles on your nose that you're really struggling to make because you've got a 30-knot headwind, but you might well be able to turn around and make it a tailwind and reach a field that's maybe 8 or 10 miles behind you. So keep that in mind. Another thing to consider is that the landing gear on retractable landing gear aircraft can often have a function where they'll automatically extend. once you get below, a certain airspeed and manifold pressure combination. That can be bad. This can significantly reduce your glide range. So you need to know how to override this function if possible and practice it. And if for some reason it's not possible in your particular aircraft, then I would say in that case you're going to need to fly above your max glide or best glide speed to avoid the automatic landing gear extension. So now as you head to the field, what happens if you arrive at the field, let's say well above the field elevation? Let's say you're directly over the field, 4,000 feet above it. What can you do? Well, you could spiral down over the field. I would recommend not using any more than 30 degrees of bank. Be mindful though, if there's winds, even if you are spiraling, you can be blown well away from the field. So you'll have to monitor your position with whatever navigation instrumentation you have, whether it's glass cockpit or electronic flight book or board, I'm sorry, EFB. And the problem you run into, of course, is if you got really low ceilings, let's say you got a 500-foot ceiling, the likelihood of coming out favorably out of that cloud deck, lined up with the runway, is going to be pretty, maybe unlikely. So I'll give you some thoughts on how to handle that in the following slides. One thing you can do is once you've got landing assured, you're above the field, you can go ahead and let the nose lower and pick up speed significantly above your max range or best glide speed, because that will give you some maneuvering capability when you break out of the weather. So one thing you could consider, if you know you would arrive well above the field elevation and you have a very low ceiling, you could consider requesting vectors to final from ATC. Keep in mind though, like in the earlier example with that video I showed you, ATC is going to give you a standard approach. Put you on probably a 5 or 6 mile final, telling you to descend, and that could not be productive for a successful outcome. So what I would recommend you do is ask for help, but do it in a informed kind of way. The one thing you need to know is that ATC is not equipped or trained to vector an engine out aircraft to final, considering its glide capability. It's just not what they do. So what you can do is tell ATC how far you can fly. So I talked a little bit earlier about essentially you can pretty much count on 1 mile for every 1,000 feet. So if let's say you're 8,000 feet AGL, tell them you can fly 8 miles. Of course, it's no wind, but let's just we need to keep it simple here for the discussion. And then ultimately ask them to give you a pattern that would get you on a 1 to 2 mile final. And essentially throughout that, you'll be maintaining a 1-to-1 ratio or better. So what you'd want to see when you're, ultimately you want to wind up on final, let's say at 2 miles and 2,000 feet AGL, and ultimately 1 mile at 1,000 AGL. So this is just a thing you can look to do to increase the probability of a favorable outcome with where you can certainly make the field, but you've got low ceilings. If you break out and you're on final with landing assured, you could consider lowering the landing gear and flaps and slipping, of course, if you see the field. You could still, though, be IMC, and you're on a 2 mile final and you're 2,000 feet. What can you do? Let's say you're 4,000 feet on a 2 mile final. What can you do? If you're very high, you could consider a 360-degree turn. I'd recommend no more than 30 degrees of bank if you're IMC, 45 degrees if you've broken out of the weather. Here it brings up a question: how much altitude does your aircraft lose per 360-degree turn if you're idle on, let's say, 45 degrees of bank? Go find out. It's easy. Go out on a beautiful VFR day and chop the power and altitude and just pick a cloud in front of you if you don't have a good heading system or whatever, and just do a 360-degree turn and notice when you get back around pointing at that cloud again and how much altitude you lost while you're capturing your max glide speed and 45 degrees of bank. If, as you're proceeding to the field, if it appears you're not going to make it, first of all, make sure you're flying your best glide speed. I mentioned on the previous slide, if you are winds are a factor. Go back to that glider rule of thumb. With a headwind, increase your best glide speed by 1/2 the wind speed. If you got a headwind, consider turning a headwind into a crosswind or tailwind to reach an alternative field, and it, by the way, may not be the closest. If you're partial power, fly as though you're engine out, because you may well soon be. And I'd recommend staying well above your 3-degree normal glide path. If you're on approach, you're going to need 7, maybe 10 degrees in most aircraft to make it to the runway if the engine fails. And that 1-to-1 rule of thumb I have been referring to frequently throughout this presentation is a good one for that. So here you are. Here's a hypothetical. You're at that 8,000 feet I mentioned the opening scenario here, and so you could say, let's say under no wind conditions, you can fly an 8 nautical mile pattern. In this case, the aircraft's maybe 2.5 miles away from the field, as I've got it depicted here. But with a really low ceiling, let's say 300 feet, 500 feet, just going straight to the field may not be optimum for your chances for having a favorable outcome. So you could tell ATC that, hey, you can fly 8 miles and you want a vectors that will take you to a 2 nautical mile final. And you could see how this could conceptually be done. Ultimately, if you can wind up on a 2-mile final at 2,000 feet AGL, you're going to have a better chance of having this become a favorable outcome than otherwise. If it looks like you're not going to make the field at all, or if it becomes really clear that you're not going to, what you can do is, recommend doing is slow to approach speed or even slower. The less energy you have as you're going into a trees or into, what other kind of obstacles may be out there, the better. Get your flaps down, your landing gear up if you've got extendable landing gear. And once again, you may need to override the landing gear auto extension. In fact, you should do that if it's possible. Go through the forced landing checklist as much as possible. Commit that to memory. The really critical things are getting the fuel shutoff valve off and locking your harness. This is kind of a interesting take. One thing you could consider doing, you could consider requesting vectors to a lake, a body of water, the ocean for that matter, if you're near the coast. That assumes, though, you can swim. I'm not a good swimmer. In fact, I'm a really poor swimmer, so I don't think it would come out well for me. So I probably would not choose that option. But I've heard people talk about this as a game plan. I'm probably going to put to use at some point. And so it is something to consider. One thing to also remember is as you're ultimately going to make contact with the ground, the point is to continue to fly all the way through the crash. As famed Bob Hoover, World War II pilot, test pilot, reminded us with his, I don't know how many airplanes he wound up crashing over the years, when airplanes weren't as reliable with engines and things like that. But he would fly it all the way through the crash. So if you got trees in front of you, well, put your nose between 2 of them and let the trees take the wings off as your fuselage goes between them. These days we've got a lot of help. It's actually magical, where you can take a 1970s airplane and give it absolutely eye-watering modern avionics. And so your glass cockpits can help you in a huge way. Your Garmin G3s, your Garmin Smart Glides, Avidyne, Dynon, Emergency Glide, etc. They can give you capabilities such as nearest airfield with data, automatic autopilot engagement, direct the nearest airfield. It can capture best glide for you, load the frequencies. Your electronic flight bags, though, these pilot aids that we have on our mobile devices these days are nothing short of amazing as well, from helping you maintain situational awareness, providing you with critical information to ultimately, help you come out in a favorable way from even difficult situations. Capabilities include things like glide rings, navigation information, airfield data. There's a program as well, Xavion. I've played with it some. I've actually talked to Austin Meyer, the developer. He's the one that's behind X-Plane. And its whole purpose is to do kind of what I was showing you earlier with the pattern, It's to give you a planned glide pattern, considering aircraft performance, to get you to final and to a landing. So I'm really quite fascinated by the program. I just need to get out and really play with it some more. We own an airplane, but it's been down for some time, and I need to, once I get it back in the air, and I can not have to worry about spending $150, $200 an hour, I can go out and really play with it. I'm looking forward to doing that. Here's an example of the type of information you can get from your glass cockpits. This is an example of an Avidyne. You push the nearest button, as I show here with my mouse, and it brings up fields, and then you can highlight that. If you touch that, of course, it gives you additional expanded information. If you don't want to do that one, then you can pick the next field, and then it knows how the circle moves from where the field is to the next. So things like this can be enormously helpful. And there's little reason while you're flying across the country to not constantly be keeping up on these nearest fields. It's not the time to be watching a movie, on Netflix or whatever that you've downloaded on your device. Use that time productively and proactively to stay ahead of the aircraft. These glass aircraft in our also as our EFBs, also the EFBs, they offer often these things referred to as synthetic vision, maybe given different names and different contexts for whichever producer is providing it. But my gosh, look at that! Even if you can't see the field, it can show you where it is very, very accurately. And you can go on YouTube and you'll find many examples of people demonstrating how accurate these things are for landing an airplane. So this can give you tremendous awareness. Make sure you know how to get to it and how to use it, and it could be a true lifesaver for you. A little bit more on the EFBs. One thing to keep in mind: most EFBs are not optimized for assisting the pilot during emergencies. They've got a lot of data, but it's cumbersome to get through to it, and a lot of button or screen touches just to get information such as frequencies and the weather and everything else, and which one's the nearest field, etc. That said, up at Oshkosh EAA, I stopped by the iFly booth and the developer for that, and I was really impressed with the program. I think it's a notable exception, and I think it's one of the best for finding the nearest airfields and providing key information. Here's a screen capture from it. The way it works is you push the nearest button, which I'm pointing at with my mouse here. It then brings up a tab of the nearest fields to you. If you touch this exclamation point here, it then color codes the fields and basically whether you can make the field or not based upon wind considerations. And if you notice here within the map view itself, you'll see that there are two rings here, and they're color coded. So basically, green ring, you should be able to make it red at the red ring or beyond, not. And that's explained here, and this is excerpt from the manual for that. So again, I'm quite impressed with this, and I need to fly with it as well and get more familiar with it. And I think it's a really impressive capability. Now, if you touch the field, like here, if you touch Springfield, it would bring up more information about the field to include, I believe, loading the approach plates and things like that. So, yeah, consider this one. FlyWire, I've talked to them quite a bit over the years, and just honestly, I haven't gotten much indication that they're working on anything that's going to help a lot in this area, and they really haven't seemed to take to heart some of the recommendations that I had given to them. I'll show you here what I had recommended to them, and I think it would be extremely helpful if we could get something like this into FlyWire, because it's obviously a very, very widely used EFB. Here's what I had recommended to them. You would have a function on the on FlyWire, emergency. If you push that, it'd just be white text, but then if you push it, it would activate it. And once it's activated, it would do all the things you see in this list right here, and give you some really, really important information critical information that could really help tremendously in the successful recovery of an aircraft under night or IMC conditions. If you'll notice here, all this information I kind of sum up here, you'll see it would be displayed in a bar across the top here. It's abbreviated, but I think it should make sense. So in this case, you're seeing, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is a, divert to base, field elevation, runway lengths and orientations, the weather there, ceiling and vis, what the winds are, altimeter setting, tower frequency, and furthermore, it would compute what altitudes you would get to the field, assuming you proceeded there directly, and it would be based upon winds as well as any terrain considerations as well. Which obviously terrain considerations, it would show you couldn't get there, but if you're going to be below the altitude that would clear the terrain. But again, unfortunately, I haven't really gotten connected very well with the ForeFlight people, even though I've talked to them at Oshkosh and emailed them about it. And this is truly a marvelous program, and they've got a constant efforts afoot to improve it. And this is just one area where I don't think they've focused sufficiently, and I hope at some point that they will. I didn't know it for the longest time, but ForeFlight, for example, has this feature within it that will actually depict for you a traffic pattern for different types of entries, whether it's an entry to downwind, midfield teardrop, or direct, or etc. So if they can do this, why not do the same thing for a glide pattern? That would be considered of your aircraft glide performance and the current conditions with wind, and basically depict this for you. So I'd like to see ForeFlight and other EFBs do something similar to this. Also, somewhat relatedly, you can imagine depictions within ForeFlight or other EFBs that would be something like this. It would give you show you your orientation relative to the field. This is just a notional design concept here, but if you got a dotted line, it means you can fly that and to arrive on final, and it would basically give you an indication that you'd be able to make the field if you did that. So in the first example there, you would arrive at the field if you went there directly at 1,200 feet, or if you fly the line, it would get you at an altitude that you have set as your minimum altitude to arrive at the field. Now you can ponder this a little bit. These are just notional concepts of what could be done. It's not a technical issue at all. We have enormous capabilities with our aircraft avionics as well, of course, with these EFBs, and it's just a matter of a choice and building a smart design to help pilots enormously with situational awareness displays such as this. Xavion, the program I mentioned earlier, again produced by Austin Meyer. He's the X-plane developer, and it's really, I'm quite impressed with it. I've yet to fly with it. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you can run this program as well as ForeFlight and others within X-plane, and so you can sit there at your desk and practice without even flying a lot of the things we've talked about here tonight. And Xavion is one of those things you can connect to it, and you can fly, simulate fly, but realistically fly how you would do an arrival into an airport under these kind of dire conditions I've been talking about this evening. Here are some displays from it. You get these gates that you fly through. If you notice here, in this case, the aircraft, there's the field right there. Hopefully this is coming out well enough in the video here, but there's the field heading away from it, because ultimately it's going to bring the aircraft to a final and line up. And so you see here the aircraft has progressed. In the second image, it's now lined up with the field. You still have the bars that you continue to fly through. And then ultimately on short final, you have the runway there. And there's some examples, of it being done in simulation on YouTube down to like 100-foot ceiling. And so in the real world, I guess go out and try it, but on a day VFR condition with a safety pilot, and to see what you could accomplish with this. Again, the time to do all this is now. Sitting at your desk, sitting at home, day VFR. It's not when it happens for real for the first time. Night flying. What do I say about that? But bottom line is, I generally avoid it. When I flew the F-16, it was easy. Had an ejection seat. But with a single engine general aviation aircraft, I'm really honestly not very comfortable flying at night. Not because of night, not because of maintaining situational awareness or attitudes or anything like that. It's just literally what happens if that engine quits. Now, I'm not checked out to fly a Cirrus. I don't know why. I've never gotten around to doing it, but yeah, I need to. And yeah, flying a Cirrus, I wouldn't hesitate to fly at night. Clearly, that system, the cap system on those aircraft have saved a lot of lives, and so yeah, I would be comfortable flying a Cirrus at night. Here are some considerations for flying at night if you are going to do it. I would recommend planning the route of flight to be airport to airport if possible. You can. I'd recommend you would. Climb well above your takeoff location to maintain a glide range to your next airport. Fly as high as practical. If airport to airport routing is not practical, consider flying along highways. Look on YouTube, you'll see plenty of examples of aircraft that have landed successfully on highways. Unfortunately, some not so successfully, but I think more often than not it comes out well. If you're attempting to land on a highway, though, land with the traffic flow. Your ultimate touchdown speed in a general aviation aircraft is roughly the speed these cars are going down the road. So you'll just kind of pull up beside them, and when they see you, they'll put their brake on and get out of the way. If you're fast as you're getting down on this field, then just you can't yet land. Well, get all the way down. Get feet off the run, or not the runway, the runway you just made, off the highway, because your real concerns here, of course, the traffic certainly, but as well, it's power lines and underpasses. So get down so you can fly under power lines if you had to, through an underpass if you had to. So just get on down there. When I was giving the presentation up at Oshkosh, someone brought up from the audience something really informative to me about the pilot-controlled lighting. So anyhow, first of all, bottom line is keep the pilot-controlled lighting for these uncontrolled airfields either is your on-deck frequency or is the primary frequency in your secondary radio. Because if not, it's going to be very difficult to pick a runway out below you. You might know the field is there, but to be on a really dark night trying to actually line up with the runway, see the runway, line up with it, good luck. So if you have the pilot controlled lighting, you can click that on. You've got it in a heartbeat, and you've got a really, by definition, a real good delineation of the airfield itself. Now, what I learned from that person at Oshkosh there a couple years ago was the pilot controlled lighting frequency may be different than the CTAF or Unicom frequency. So do your homework before you go flying and figure out if that's the case. Get your route of flight figured out and make sure you know what those PCLs are. If you can't make it to an airfield, then yeah, same thing like for the IMC situation. Slow to approach speed or slower. Get your flaps down. Leave the landing gear up. Override it if you need to. Go through your forced landing checklist. Once again, if you're a good swimmer, consider requesting vectors to a lake, or maybe you can figure it, a lake that's around you, can just see the dark body below you there, then go for that. And once again, per Bob Hoover, continue to fly all the way through the crash. That kind of sums it up. I encourage you to develop a plan for engine failure during IMC at night. Practice your plan during day VMC conditions with a safety pilot. You can also practice your plan in a simulator such as X-Plane using avionics and an EFB, and it's cheap, and you can put it on pause, and you can learn a whole lot by just playing at your desk. So really would encourage you to do that. A few references here. The one video I showed in the beginning, as well as some really, really interesting YouTube videos I've seen over the years on FlyWire with Scott Purdue, and then Blancolirio had a really good one about engine failure over the Rockies. So I think you would really benefit from watching those, and then some additional information. So I will put these links in the comments so you can click on them versus having to type them in, because obviously from the video you won't be able to do that. That's pretty much it. It's not an Academy Award quality presentation, but hopefully the content was of interest to you. If you would like a PDF copy of what I've presented here, please email me and I will gladly send it to you. And I may eventually crank out another version of this one. This is my first foray into doing a somewhat lengthy video instructional that I would post on YouTube. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please let me know if you have any questions, and fly safe.